Katy Perry is the most mocked woman in the world right now. First, it was Woman's World, intended to be a feminist anthem, but ironically produced by Dr. Luke, who was accused of drugging and raping pop star Kesha. Then she did A Quick Dash to Space, singing to the crew, which was positioned as some kind of feminist accomplishment, when really it was a big ad for Jeff Bezos, who is pillaging the environment and maybe offering a lift to the rich people who want to exit Earth ASAP. Even Wendy's, the fast food giant, tweeted, "Can we send her back?" referring to Perry being left in space. Now it's the Lifetime's tour. Have you two seen clips of her most recent concerts?
I have. And this is, so now anytime there's a major tour, you kind of watch it on TikTok and Reels and things before you see it anywhere else. And they're often from very up close angles from people in the front row. And I've seen a lot of Katy Perry's dancing with very unflattering captions.
Yes, right. So to sum up the sentiment, there are clips of her not singing and looking out of breath, like she might be mouthing, or sometimes she just kind of stops singing and walks across the stage, seemingly not knowing her choreography or performing unusual choreography, looking fatigued. Some are saying she has no budget, and there's a trend going around of showing things like Pink's acrobatics or something she's allegedly stolen from Taylor Swift. She has a board that she spins for a surprise song, which is apparently something Sabrina Carpenter did.
Yeah, there are also parts, like there's a whole sequence of her with like jousting. With
like a Jedi.
Yeah, like a Jedi, but she's just sort of running around the stage. And some of the dance moves do not look that far away from what we have performed on tour.
Holy moly. Anyone who saw our Perth show last week is currently going, really? That bad?
The theme of Lifetimes is Katy Perry versus the robots. But for the first few concerts, AI imagery was used in the background, which has since been changed because that just looked a bit hypocritical. The backlash got so bad that Perry had to address it. She told her Instagram followers that she was dealing with illness while performing in Mexico City and also struggling with the high altitude. I have my own theories about what's going on with Katy Perry, but first, I wanted to explore whether the criticism is fair, because Katy Perry is coming to Australia in a few months. The tickets most people got would have been like $180. It is not cheap. And if you went and you felt like you were given a lackluster performance, is it fair enough to call it out?
I have a question about that, which is, do the people who have seen the show, like the audiences who are going, are they coming out of there happy or not? Because all the snarky clips I've seen, obviously the person who films it was there, but I haven't seen, blanket statement that fans felt ripped off. That is not what I've seen. I've just seen lots of snarky commentary from a few people.
It's really hard to get a sense of scope.
Yeah,
because you get the odd video that then went viral, and you also think, if you went to any concert, could you find a 5-second grab where the person looked like they weren't doing a good job?
I wonder if it's truly representative in that way, and whether what Katy Perry is doing on her tour, like any artist does, and particularly one who's been around for a very long time, like she has. She's, it's nearly 20 years since she first came into the public eye. A lot of people are going to just have a great night, to sing songs that they've got history with, to enjoy themselves. Are they doing that? Is she delivering? Because if she is, that's great. I think, and I think we'll talk about Beyonce a little bit later, but that the way that live shows are sold now is like self-harm for artists, because there's dynamic pricing. The tickets are ridiculously expensive. All of this is too expensive. You have to be an absolute superfan to fork out hundreds and hundreds of dollars. And even then, there's a subset of people who can afford it. You're lifting the bar to a sky-high place, and you're going to have empty seats because not all your fans can afford to go. So I think that touring now is more complicated than it was. I have to say that when I watch these videos, I just feel sick for her, because what I'm watching, whether it is that she is tired or sick, as she says, or that she's under-rehearsed or whatever, she has no choice than to be out there. She can't be like, I'm not match fit, I'm not going. And just that feeling, maybe I over-empathize with it, but that feeling of, oh my God, I'm here and it's bad.
Yeah.
It makes me feel sick.
If you are unwell, or even if you're just if you want to be in the fetal position because the entire world have jumped on you for the Blue Origin thing.
Well, that's what's interesting is that the world has decided collectively, it seems, and not just since Blue Origin, but since the Woman's World video and her sort of comeback, that Katy Perry is deeply uncool, right? That now seems to be the general consensus. So what are you supposed to do when the world has consigned you to the bargain bin? That's what I'd love to know. Mia, what do you think?
Well, as you say, the narrative has been set and now people are just looking for evidence to feed that narrative. In some ways, Katy is a pop star of a different time. Her shtick's always been high camp, like the whipped cream coming out of her bra, all of that sort of over-the-top teenage dream, I kissed a girl, and it hasn't really evolved. And I think that while other artists have sort of moved forward, she's at that difficult time where she's tried to reinvent herself, but what people love about her is that shtick. But that shtick sort of also can feel a little bit old-fashioned. What you say about now TikTok and critics, you know, the impression of a concert is not necessarily put out there by the fans of that person. And when you're playing to thousands and thousands and tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people all over the world, there are going to be some who like it, some who don't, some who are pissed off that they paid too much or that they had bad seats or who are just looking to go viral for something that they're posting, right? So I've also seen a couple of clips which haven't been surfacing in my algorithm nearly as much as the bad ones of her like in a cage, spinning upside down, like doing tricky stuff. Like the concert is very long.
And it's really, that's an interesting point because she's being accused of copying all these big female artists. In a way, it seems like it's never been harder to be a female artist because of the competition. It's like when she came out 10 years ago or whatever, there was something even a little bit transgressive about the types of songs she was singing and the type of character she played. And now she can't take two steps on stage without it being reminiscent of the big stars that are like the acrobatics. People are going, that's Pink. And it's like, well, I guess maybe she is trying to evolve. And the pressure on female pop stars, Rolling Stone wrote a piece about this, how the pressure for incredible choreography and storytelling is almost purely on women. Like men don't have that same expectation.
Look at Ed Sheeran, just goes out with his guitar.
Yeah,
there we go.
Yeah.
I looked at also the running time of concerts. I mean, we can't really talk about this without referencing Taylor Swift, who has completely not just raised the bar, but sent it into the stratosphere with what she did with the Eras tour. You know, the running time of that show was between 3 hours and 15 minutes and 3 hours and sort of 40 minutes. That is extraordinary. She sang, I think, something like 40-something songs. Beyonce's concerts are about 2.5 hours. Katy Perry's are about 2 hours. Charli XCX is about 1 hour to 1 hour and 20. Wow. Harry Styles, for example, is about an hour and a half.
Well, let's be clear. Concerts didn't used to be that long.
And like, also,
this is a
women
new
dance.
thing.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
This is a new thing that
concerts
are 3 hours long.
have become much, much longer now. And the endurance required when you're not part of a band, like I went and saw Harry Styles, there wasn't really any choreography. He sort of strutted around the stage only for an hour and a half, whereas the women are expected to perform all out, you know, and every single night. And that does take a lot of stamina.
In a streaming era where artists are not making the bulk of their money anymore from, you know, selling albums because people aren't going into sanity and buying an album, they're making their money from touring. So it's like they have to tour more and more, have bigger and bigger stadiums, and then you're mocked. I remember this recently happened to J-Lo. She was mocked because she couldn't sell all the tickets. And it's like, do you know how many tickets are in that stadium? And then you can't cancel because Justin Bieber, I was reading something recently that said it looks like he's in about $20 million debt because he cancelled a tour, that he will be paying off.
Yeah, for his mental health.
Yeah, for years and years.
And Beyonce, it should be said, she started her Cowboy Carter tour on the weekend and she was playing to half-empty stadiums. And they had dynamic prices. But then they did cut prices at the end to try and fill the stadium. And this is in LA. And you had people who paid $700 for a ticket sitting next to people who'd bought tickets for like $150. And so the system is clearly broken.
Yeah.
And also cost of living.
I think dynamic pricing is a terrible idea because as you just said, Jessie.
Can you explain what it is?
Yeah, so what dynamic pricing is, it means it's not like, oh, I want to go and see Oasis and the tickets cost $200, which is a lot of money anyway. But maybe they cost $200. Maybe if you go on to buy them when everyone else wants to buy them too, they cost $500.
Maybe
if there are
it's
any
like
left.
surge pricing with Ubers.
Yeah. So they say that an artist and the ticketing company get together and they set what they call an aggressive pricing scheme. And some artists say, no, we're not going to do dynamic pricing. Like the way that tours used to be, good seats cost this much, bad seats cost this much, floor is this, VIP room is that. You decide your profit margin and you go for it, right? But this, as they call it, the aggressive strategy is who knows how much things cost. And again, I think that this is setting concerts up for failure because imagine the vibe of having paid $800 for a ticket, which is what people were saying Beyonce's tickets were costing, and knowing that there's a half-empty stadium and you're like, why did I pay for this much? You're going in already angry, right? You're already pissed off. You're also not going to – it's just not realistic that even the biggest Beyonce fans in the world can afford to buy $800 tickets for them and their daughter and their friend. It's like, it's a ridiculous idea.
She was also on tour not that long ago. But back to Katy Perry for a second. I think what's interesting to explore with her and why the tide has turned so hard on her, and it does feel like she's on the bottom of a pylon in many ways. It seems like what she's putting out there is just everyone's calling bullshit on what she's putting out there. So she, for example, Woman's World, she wanted to have this female anthem of empowerment, and in fact, there were 8 male producers on that show, on that track, including the man accused of sexually assaulting Kesha. Then she went into space with a friend, fun girls' trip, but tried to put it out there as something that was great for all women and STEM and etc. So I think people are already like smelling bullshit and don't like to be sold something that they know not to be true.
But then I think that once we have a narrative in our heads, we find it very difficult to shift it. And so it's like it's all becoming very self-fulfilling. But I read I saw it on TikTok, a very interesting theory about what happened with Katy Perry's concert. Because when you do see clips, something doesn't seem right in terms of her being very self-assured about the choreography. And when we know the lead time of a tour and what it takes to prep, a lot of people are going, were you too busy in space to actually practice your choreography?
That was only 11 minutes.
Exactly. That was 11 minutes. This is a theory that this concert, she knew she was doing the Blue Origin thing and that her going to space was actually going to be the theme. Like that she was going to come out in the suit because there's these weird things that don't quite make sense. Like there's a moon that appears in it and there's kind of things hinting at it. And they're like at the last minute, did she almost have to
read the room,
rejig the entire concert to go, you will be laughed off stage if you go and do this kind of Blue Origin concert. So now it's been tweaked because the thing about Katy Perry did they turn the aliens into robots? And now is it this really incoherent mess where she's had to relearn
that would make more sense.
A lot of steps. It actually makes a lot of sense.
Also, the audience don't care. They just want to go and sing along to Teenage Dream and have a drink with their mates. Like, just stop overcomplicating it. I have a question, though, that I'd love for the group. I have a question for the group. As you said before, Jessie, the biggest artists in the world now are women, which is a fantastic place to be. Like the most talked about, the most successful artists in the world are women, and all different kinds of women, which we talked about a while ago when we were talking about the Grammys. And that's wonderful. But if you are like a legacy, small, 20 years, I reckon, is it makes you a bit of a legacy, and that's Beyonce and that's Taylor Swift. And that's actually, it is Taylor Swift. But in this case, it is Beyonce, it is Katy Perry. And is it fair to be compared to the Charlie XCXs, the Lords, the whoever, who are selling a very different aesthetic, this kind of very pared back, supposedly easygoing, just thrown together vibe.
Without any choreography. Without any backup dancers dressed like gladiators.
Exactly. And there's a very different shift. But is it fair? Like, should the old, in inverted commas, artists be trying to be the young artists? Because that feels wrong and inauthentic too. You know, it's like, I think there's a particular challenge, isn't there, of you're going, well, I know that what's cool is brat, but can I really be brat when my songs are like, oh, I kissed a girl like 20 years ago?
That's interesting.
And that was a shocking, transgressive song. Like,
because one
really?
criticism I've seen of Katy Perry, and this keeps coming up a lot, is mum moves, criticising her mum moves.
There's a lot of ageism in
There's
this.
ageism, I think, inherent in this, which is that you are old, you're over the hill, you're daggy. But on the other hand, the artist who is not Charli XCX, who is not Taylor Swift and has never tried to be, is Adele. Like, Adele is not going to do the acrobatics. She can stand there.
She doesn't do choreo.
But that's a different thing.
It's a different thing.
So I think if you're an artist who you know who you are, you've got this very authentic, like Adele was never a pop star, right? Adele is an artist. And, you know, you could say the same thing about quite a few, because not all female pop stars do choreography and stuff. Gracie Abrams just sold arenas out in Sydney and she doesn't do that. That's not her thing. So there are all kinds of different artists, but I think it's possibly easy. Like Adele can do a Vegas residency and stand there in a gown and sing. Katy Perry can't do that. Like, she was a pop star. So.
Yeah. I think that the pop of it all is where it's a very competitive space. And I went and saw Katy Perry probably 10 years ago now, and it was brilliant. She was so good. And it was her voice, and this is what I don't understand about some of the clips. I'm like, say what you want about Katy Perry. She can sing. Like, she actually can sing, and that was part of, like, she was in gospel choirs and all that kind of stuff. Like, she has a voice. But when she's not, that's why I kind of believed that she was sick, when you could hear that she just wasn't able to.
But our pop stars are getting older and it gets harder. You know, Katy Perry's in her 40s, Beyonce's in her 40s. Interestingly, the coverage I've seen of the Cowboy Carter tour, Blue Ivy's out front and centre. She's 13 and she's doing all the moves. And even little Rumi, her youngest daughter, is there. And there are a lot of bells and whistles to distract or detract from the fact that Beyonce doesn't dance like she used to. And I remember reading about Taylor Swift, and I saw a couple of those concerts. Watching the Katy Perry stuff made me appreciate Taylor even more in terms of her attention to detail, because there is not a single moment, even in a transition, even in a bit where she might not be singing, where every movement is not precision. And when I watched each concert, that were the same movements, and then I watched the movie. So even like when it seems like she's just freestyling, she's not.
What I will say about Taylor, though, and I wonder if this is also the result of everything being filmed up close. By the time Taylor got to Australia, how many times had she performed that concert? Like,
do you know
it was
how she
in
trained
her bones
to perform that? I got obsessed with all of this. But she trained by running full tilt on the treadmill while singing.
Beyonce does that.
The whole concert, because the stamina you need, we've tried it, it's really hard to sing and dance at the same time.
But then I suppose Katy Perry, it's like the same as I go to a lot of opening nights for musicals, and you often see an error. You see an error because it's the first time they've done it in front of an audience. Like, now that everyone has a phone in their hand, that gets captured and then that becomes viral rather than Katy Perry. She'll probably be brilliant by the time she gets to Australia.
They should start locking the phones away like they do when you go to comedy shows, because maybe no one should have to see this.
Thanks out loudest for not posting much of us in Perth.
I just want to leave it by saying, like, think about Mick Jagger, who has been running around pretending to be 22 into his 80s, right? And he's been mocked for that for about 30 years now, since he was about 50. But there's a respect there, right? And I wonder, as our female icons are getting older, are we just going to be as brutal, like way more brutal with them about age than we ever have been with any of the male icons? I suspect, yes.
Justin Timberlake copped it for his dad
dancing.
Dad dancing, that's very true.
It's going to wreck the world tour.